Hey developers, welcome back to another episode in Software Engineering in Salesforce. My name is Brooks Johnson, and today we're going to build a rock, paper, scissors game with Lightning Web Components. And this kind of got started, right? Because I see a lot of good content that helped me when I was starting on the internet, right? Learning to program. With JavaScript, building, kind of like simple retro games. Free Code Camp does a lot of great stuff like that. And I thought it might be useful for folks trying to learn Lightning Web Components to take some of these same games and, let's build them with Lightning Web Components. So we're going to start today with the most simple one possible, rock, paper, scissors. We're just going to do one component, hardly any CSS, but I think it's going to be a really great foundational lesson in Lightning Web Components. If you are new to them, you're trying to learn how they work. So you can see here up on the screen, right? This is our finished project. Our finished product is this little, I'm going to call it our rock, paper, scissors app. I've got it in this LWC projects application, and I'll put a link to the repo in. I'm going to try to build this out as its own package that you can grab and install in your own, Scratch orgs, take a look at, play around with if you want. So, right, we've got, this is how it should start, right? Player score 0, computer score 0. And each time we're going to guess rock, paper, scissors. And it's going to show us our guess. Then it's going to generate a guess for the computer and determine the winner and increment the scores. So let's just say if I guess rock. All right, computer guessed paper. If we're all familiar with the rules of rock, paper, scissors, paper covers rock, so the winner is the computer. Computer score is 1. I'm going to guess paper this time. Paper, computer wins again, right? So the computer score is 2. Scissors cuts paper. What if I go with scissors? Scissors, all right, now I win, right? Scissors cuts paper. So this is what we're going to build. Simple little rock, paper, scissors app, but I think it shows a lot of the real foundational concepts that are important to working with Lightning Web Components, particularly around basic events and data binding. So let's get to it. Alrighty, so I'm going to hop over and open up my, let's see, where do I want? My Illuminated Cloud IntelliJ there. And let's start setting this thing up. So first off, I'm going to say that I am going to build this. I know we showed in the little demo in an org. I'm going to build this for the video using the local dev server. And again, I'll put a link to it, or you can Google, Salesforce Lightning Web Components local development server. This is how I prefer to work because it's a lot faster and I think easier than constantly pushing up to an org, refreshing the screen, which gets tedious real fast. So this is a plugin for the Salesforce CLI. So to follow along with this piece, right, you do need the Salesforce CLI. You do need the plugin. I'll put a link to it, but, feel free if you're not comfortable with it, right, you can just, push it right up to a developer edition or whatever you're doing. But I'm going to do SFDX, Force, Lightning, LWC. I have a semicolon there, which I most certainly do not want. Force, Lightning, come on. LWC, start. Okay. Let's just get that going. And this will make the video go along a little bit faster, I think. Take a second, let that spin up. All right, we will ignore the fact that we can update our CLI right now. Starting our local dev server. Just give that a second. All right, we're on localhost 3333. So again, I'm using IntelliJ Illuminated Cloud. Right, I'm just going to click on that, and it's going to open up an instance of the local dev server right here on my machine for me. I'll just let that load, and then we're going to start coding this thing up. And right, it's empty because we have nothing built for this. So back to our project. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to my LWC folder, and I'm going to hit new Lightning Web Component. And I'm going to call it, creatively enough, rock, paper, scissors. All right. And I'm going to say is exposed true. I am not going to create a CSS file. If you were doing this in Visual Studio Code, it's going to look a little different, but that's okay. Just create the Lightning Web Component however you create it in the IDE of your choice, right? All right. I am going to close out my terminal because I don't need that. Now, the first thing we want to do, if we want to actually be able to see this app somewhere, so I already set this. If you did it in Visual Studio Code, I think you have to go in there like this is exposed in your XML. Change that to true. All right, and then we need to tell Salesforce like what pages this could show up on. So that's targets. Okay, and then within targets, we're going to do target. And I'm going to say this could be on a Lightning app page, right? But you could put whatever you want in there, Lightning homepage, Lightning record page, etc., right? But just to show like we did in the video, that was on an app page, so we have to make it exposed and put it on a Lightning app page. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to create our layout. All right, let's build our game screen. So I'm going to say we need a Lightning card. We're going to do this just in a base Lightning Web Component. So we're going to use a Lightning card. And I'm going to say title, rock, paper, scissors. All right, and that's finishing that up for me because I built this once before to have a working concept for the video. And we're going to say icon name and the one I used, you go feel free to take whatever icons you want from Salesforce. I used Custom 47, was the one I showed earlier. All right. And then we need to close that out. All right, so where we go. We have our Lightning. I don't know what is going on with my... Has to be something that only happens when I'm making videos, is my keyboard goes crazy. So then, we're going to wrap the whole thing in a div. So I'm going to do div, right, like that. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to give my div a class. So we're going to use very, very little CSS in this video, but I do want to give it a little space around. So we're going to say SLDS-var-m around small, right? We're just going to put some margin around our content, all right? And so now if I go back to, I'm going to say if I go back to our dev server, right? So I can see now I have a rock, paper, scissors component. So let's load that. Okay, so there we go. Impressively enough, we have that title and that's it. Okay. Custom 47, icon name. I don't know why my icon didn't load there, but we'll come back to that and solve that maybe later. All right, so let's do, I want a P up top where I'm going to put in a couple spans. And I'm going to say player score. And for right now, you know what? We're just going to hard code this in. All right. I need another span. I'm going to call that one computer score. So these are just like we showed earlier. This is just where we're going to show the scores. And I want to put a little space between these two spans because I want them all on one row, but not super tight together. So, first of all, let's just show what does it look like right now. Okay, so I want a little space, right? I want to put something between player score and computer score. And look at that. We've got a typo there already. All right. So all I'm going to do here, I'm going to give it another class. Class equals, and I'm going to put a little padding on the right side of this. So I'm going to say SLDS dash var dash P dash right medium. All right. We're just going to put a little space between those guys. Make it look a little bit nicer. Okay, so now we've got our score area set up. All right. And if you're not familiar with all the HTML tags, right, so we did a P, which is a block level tag, and then we did the spans, right, so they are line level. So we can put a couple things inside that P and have them just sit on the same line real easily. I'm going to do another P tag. This one is winner. And we're just going to leave that blank, not winder, winner. All right. And I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to put some padding in here. Class equals SLDS dash var. And the var, if you're wondering about that, that is somebody, if they set their layout to cozy or normal, the var allows that to adjust if the user changes their personal layout settings. So we're going to do SLDS var M, which is for margin. So we're just going to set our vertical margin. Okay. Winner. And then we need, I'm going to just real quickly, I'm going to just make 3 paragraph elements, right? All right. And then I want to show your guess. And then we're going to show the computer guess, right? Computer guess. All right. So there we go. We have got the top of the game heading set up. So let's hop back over, and that should look okay in our markup. When we refresh this, let's take a look at it. All right, so that's good. All right, so we've got our title. We've got player score, computer score, winner, your guess, computer guess, all set up. All right, so let's back to our terminal. Boom, boom, boom. And what is our next step here? You know what we need to make our buttons, right? So we are going to do lightning button. Again, we're going to do this whole thing with base web components. And we are going to do the whole thing in one LWC, right? So we're not going to do composition. We're not going to have a button element and a game header element, which you could. But my goal is to make this as simple as possible. So we're going to take a lightning button, and we are going to, I'm trying to think, we want label equals rock. I'm going to go variant. These are just kind of what color do you want your buttons. I'm going to use double quotes. Variant is neutral. That's right. That's what I was looking for. Sorry. Had to look back at my notes to remind me of that one. Okay. Variant is neutral. Name. This is really important, as we're going to name these, and then we're going to talk about why that can be so useful. But for right now, we're going to close it out. All right. Get rid of that empty space there. And I'm going to copy this sucker. All right. We're going to make 3 of these. Whoop. Now we're going to make 2 more of these. All right, and let's get in here and this one is paper. We need to change its name to paper. This is going to be our scissors button. Scissors. All right, I'm going to change name to scissors. Just going to keep those lower case, so just to make sure I'm consistent, because I see I've got one lowercase. We're going to make all these names lowercase. To save us any trouble later on. Okay, and I'm trying to remember. Now, you know what we did? We're going to put a little bit of, again, margin in this middle button just to spread things around a little bit. So we're going to say class equals, and then we're going to do SLDS var m, and we're going to put margin around the whole thing. And this should pretty much, we refresh our server, and this should have our game board pretty much complete. All right, perfect. Okay, so we have got exactly like we showed earlier. We've got our title, we've got player score, computer score, winner, your guess, computer guess. And of course, the nuts is it does absolutely nothing, right? Because all we've done is write up our HTML file. So let's start up on our JavaScript. All right, so I should link to this. I have another video on just kind of the anatomy of a Lightning Web Component, but at its most basic, right, you have an HTML file and you have a JavaScript file. All right, so we have completed our HTML file. We're going to tweak it a little bit now that we go work on our JavaScript, but what we're going to do now, the JavaScript is what lets us make this interactive, right? So let's open up our JavaScript file. And the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to go up here to the top, and I'm going to give myself a couple constants. And this is just going to save us some time later. So I'm going to say const paper, and I'm going to put it in screaming case like that. Paper and const rock, because this is going to just save us passing around some magic strings later on. Rock and const scissors equals scissors. And then let's put a little space here, just because that's how I like to format it when I do it. All right, then we have our rock, paper, scissors extends lightning element. So what we need to do here is we need to give ourselves some properties that we can bind to our HTML file. So we're going to say, when this thing loads, right, we want player score to equal 0 and computer score to equal 0. Those are our default values. And if you remember from earlier, like, we're also going to need properties to store the player's guess, the computer's guess, and who is the winner, right? Because all those things are going to be generated and determined in our JavaScript file, and we need a way to display those to the user in our HTML file, right? So let's create 3 more properties. Player guess, right? And I'm just going to leave these as undefined. I'm not even going to give them initial values. And computer guess, and winner. Okay. So now, if I go over here, back to my HTML, where I had player score and computer score, and we hard-coded in those scores. So now we want to make those interactive. So we're going to put curly braces in, and curly braces is how you bind to a JavaScript expression. And we say, hey, this is going to evaluate to our property of, why is player score not showing up? There it is. Okay. Don't know why everything seems really slow with my machine today. Computer score. And then we are going to go and we're going to bind this one to computer score. Okay. And now we're also going to take care of these. We're Remember? So we are going to bind these to what those expressions in our, or those properties, I should say, what to in our JavaScript file. So player guess. So in order to do that, we just have to put them in curly braces and invoke those properties from our file. And then our computer guess. Again, curly braces, not square braces. It's not an array. And computer guess. Okay. So now if we save that, it should look absolutely no different at all. Back to our local dev server. Refresh that. And we go, okay, yes, so that's actually, I mean, this is what we want, right? Nothing looks any different. All we did is we got rid of those hard-coded zeros up top, and we bound them to a JavaScript property that is also set to 0. And here, right, these also, there were values we bound to, you know, winner, player guess, computer guess, but we left those, right now they don't evaluate to anything, so nothing is showing up in our markup file. All right, so now the next thing we need to do is actually let our player guess a game. So what we have to do now, and this is, we skipped this earlier, but we need to put in our event handlers. So we need to tell it, and what that means, so if I'm going to show, so Lightning Web Components, if you're used to writing vanilla JavaScript with a more imperative, right, you're going to, you know, document.query, you know, query element, you know, and you're going to select the element, you're going to add the event listener, tell it what the callback function is. Things like Lightning Web Components, React, right, use a much more declarative model where we're not going to tell the computer how to do everything. We're just going to tell the computer that, hey, on click, call this method. So I'm going to do, for each of these, I'm going to go in, on click, and I'm going to bind to handle click, even though we have not written that method yet. All right. But in each of our buttons, to make these buttons do anything at all, we have to tell the computer what happens when the user clicks on it. Handle click. Down to our last one. On click. Handle click. Okay. So now we've got 3 buttons, and they all have click handlers. And what we have to do is we actually have to define that click handler in our JavaScript file. So up here at the top, I'm going to go up to the top, and I'm going to write a method, handle click. And that method is going to take an event as its parameter. And that will be the default first thing passed in. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of space here. Not sure my formatting is a little wonky, so we're going to just kick everything over. All right, so handle click. On handle click, what we need to do is we need to go, because we named our buttons, right? We gave those buttons names, rock, paper, scissors. So we're going to grab that name out of the event. So what we're going to do, we want to take the name. So if the player clicked the rock button, we want to show that the player's guess was rock, right? They clicked paper. We want to show that the player's guess was paper, so on and so forth. So in a Lightning Web Component, because we are in a class, right? So we want to reference the player guess property. So we're going to say this dot player guess. And we're going to set that. I'm going to tell you what, I don't know. Now, there is something about Camtasia, which is the video software, that is playing rough with my My machine is getting way like kind of crazy and not responsive. Might be time to look for new software. I don't know. This dot player guess, so equals, and we're going to set event dot target dot name. All right, because we are going, so the event, the target is going to be that button that the player clicked. That's going to be the target of the event. And because we assigned it a name, that's going to come right in as our property. The event.target.name is going to equal rock, paper, scissors. So that is all we have to do. This should allow, when the player clicks a button, right, it should take that value out of the event and bind it up here to our player guess property. And then, right, it's going to render that on the screen. So let's take a look. Let's save this and make sure that's really the case. All right, click rock, and we should see rock on your guess. Rock, boom, paper, scissors. Perfect. That's all we wanted to see, right? We got it all. Okay. So let's, now, it's a little more work. We've got to take care of the computer's guess and figure out the winner. Okay. So I am going to say the next thing we need to do is generate the computer's guess. And to do that, we're going to use a random number, right? We're going to create a random number, and we're going to say if it's 0, it's a rock. If you guess 1, the computer generates 1 as a random number, it's paper. And if it generates 2 as a random number, it's scissors. So we're going to create our next method, and I'm going to call it generate computer guess. And the first thing we need to do here is get a random number. So I'm going to say const random equals, and we're going to use the JavaScript math library. We're going to say math.floor. That's just going to, because math.random actually generates, a decimal value. So we're actually going to use this to then kind of, round down, multiply, and get ourselves an actual counting number that we can use. So math.floor, math.random, and then we're going to say we want to multiply that, I'm going to say times 3, okay? And we'll put that in the log just so you can see that, but that should give us a random number between 0 and 2 every time. So we'll just say console.log the random number is random. All right. And for those of you who are not familiar with what I just did here, this is string interpolation, which was I don't remember, ES5, ES6 edition of the JavaScript language. But so we can go in here and backticks and write our string. But then I could also, if I do this syntax, $ curly braces, I can bind in, pass in, values. So a little easier than, single quotes, like if you're doing Apex, just, and plus, and then your variable name, so on. So we're going to just do that so we can see what is in the console.log. And then we're just going to write a real simple if statement. And we're going to say if random, and we're going to use triple equals, exact equality, strict equality. If it equals 0, then we're going to say this computer guess, and we're going to use those constants we wrote at the very beginning, guess equals rock. So if the computer guess is 0, it's going to be rock. And we're going to do an else if. And we're going to say if, this time we're going to do if random equals 1. This dot computer guess, right? And that's going to be paper. And then we're just going to do our else. Really didn't even need to guess, I guess, because we're really just going to use two numbers. Then we're going to say else. This dot computer guess, and then we're going to set that equal to the scissors constant. And then we need to call that, right? So in our handle click here, right? So the player made a guess. Now that the player has made a guess, I think then we just want to then generate the computer guess. This dot generate computer guess. So make sure if this, so the syntax in a JavaScript class like this, right? Because I want to call this generate computer guess method in the same class, I have to start it with this dot generate computer guess. So you're going to see the this everywhere, which just means we're referring to the same class. So this dot player score, or this dot generate computer guess. All right, let's go back to our local dev server. Let that refresh with our latest changes. And now we should also see the computer guess populate, right? So we're going to guess rock. And the computer guesses scissors. And if I open up my console, right, I can see the random number was 2, right? We're still perfect, right? We're going to generate, if I guess again, 2 scissors, right? Computer guess rock, the random number was 1. So everything is working there, A-OK. We're going to close that out. Now, the last thing we need to do is figure out who actually won this game. So we're going to write one last method. Scroll down here. I'm going to call this one determine winner. Determine winner. And the first condition we're going to want to handle is if the player and the computer make the same guess, which happens a lot when you play rock, paper, scissors. So we're going to say if this dot player guess is exactly equal to this dot computer guess, and we're going to say this dot winner, and we're going to set that equal to a draw. I'm just going to put draw in right there, and then we're just going to return out of here. I'm going to exit out. Otherwise, we want to check all these other conditions. So I'm going to say if this dot, we need parentheses there for any of this to work. So we're going to say if this dot player guess, well, I'm going to say if the player guesses rock, we're going to use those same values from our constants earlier. If the player guesses rock, and so what did the computer guess? And this dot computer guess triple equals scissors. So rock beats scissors, right? We're going to say this dot winner equals, you know what, and I realize I'm going to be typing this a lot, so I'm going to go back. I don't want to keep typing you win over and over, so I'm going to say const player wins. I did, but let's keep that consistent. Player win equals you win. Put an exclamation point on there because that's really exciting that we won rock, paper, scissors. And we're going to do const computer win. I'm going to set that. Same thing. Computer. computer wins. All right. Let's get back down to our determine the winner method. If, then this dot winner equals player win. Okay, there we go. So now, right, my general rule, if I need to write a string more than once, it's going to go into a constant because inevitably I'm going to need to change it sometime. And also just because I'm lazy. And now I can just, my code completion will just reference that same variable over and over and over. And I don't have to type this string over and over and over. So we also need to increment the player score. So we're going to say this. Whoa. We're going to do plus plus. Did I give it scores? Stop player. Payer score. No wonder. All right. Let's change that name to player score. And we probably have the wrong thing. Yeah, we're going to change the name in our template to player score. Go back down here. Okay, so if the player guessed rock and the computer guessed scissors, the player wins. We're going to update the value with this.winner equals the player win constant, and we are going to increment the player score by 1. Next, we're going to do else if this. We're going to do our rocks. Stop player guess. But this time the player is going to lose. And I really apologize for whatever is going on with my machine today. This dot player guess, so we want that triple equal. Single equal will just be an assignment verb. Player guess equals rock, and this dot computer guess. So we're going to check if the computer guesses paper. Then we're going to say that the computer wins. So we're going to say this dot winner, and we're going to give it the value of the computer win constant that we defined earlier, and we need to increment the computer score. So we're going to say this dot computer score plus plus. All right. So hopefully you kind of get the hang of what we're doing here. Is we're just going to go through here because I'm looking at this. This is already a pretty long video, so I'm going to just drop the rest of the code in here, and we can see how it all works. And obviously, if you've made it through this far, you've seen we're having some technical difficulties between, I think, my video software and my IDE are fighting for system resources. But we're going to go through the same process for each one of these, right? If the player guesses rock, who wins, loses. If the player guesses paper, who wins, who loses. And if the player guesses scissors, who wins, who loses. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show what that looks like. I think we have everything in place. So this should work now, if I didn't screw up my copy and paste job out of my notes. All right, except we are not updating the winner value, huh? Check that out. What is going on there? Else, this dot winner. You know what we did wrong? You know what? It's funny that you got to call the method, right? So we wrote a method, we generated the computer guess, but we never actually used it. So we're going to say this dot determine winner, right? So the player clicks the button. We're going to figure out what is the player's guess. We're going to assign that value. Then we're going to call the next method, generate computer guess, figure out what the computer's guess is to a random number, and then we're going to determine the winner. All right, so back to our local dev server. Rock. Okay, you guess rock. Computer guesses scissors. You win. Player score 1. Let's go. Just guess rock again. All right, there we go. Exactly what we wanted to see. Computer guesses paper. The computer wins. So everything is working. So I hope this was a useful video. I think there's a lot of really good, really important, fun, essential Lightning Web Component concepts in here with events, event handlers, data binding. So again, I hope it was useful to you. If it was, please take a second, click like and subscribe. Take a look at the repo. Maybe that would be something else. And keep practicing. And I will see everybody next time. Take care.